No, we're not, but it sounds pretty tempting.
Just put it in front of carrots.
Carrots, $50,000. Please, if you're not a professional, don't try
Don't
this.
go.
That was just $50,000. Keep going. $50,000. Keep going. No, stop where you ought to. Welcome back to the Morning Crossfire. This is 99.3 Nigeria Info. And today we're looking at LASSA fever. Yearly, we lose people to this predictable fever, which is contagious, hemorrhagic. And we're asking questions about why we allow ourselves to lose people every year as a nation, or don't these lives matter? This is predictable.
It is.
Every
Absolutely.
year, we
Absolutely.
don't fail to record deaths. Welcome to the show. It's going to be a very tough one. You learn all you need to about Lassa fever, how you can protect yourself, and what you need to do. This will happen for the next 1 hour when we're Facebook. We're there. Also on YouTube, Nigeria Info 99.3. Someone sent a message on Twitter saying, I'm no longer in Lagos. How can I join? You can join anywhere in the world. Anytime you're traveling, take us with you. You can watch us live on Facebook and YouTube. You can also listen on our website, nigeriainfo.fm. I am Wemimo Adewuni. Welcome.
And I am
Yes.
Sheriff Quadry.
Let's sell the market.
We beat
Right.
we beat you. Welcome to Morning Crossfire, and please, we would like to also get your thoughts, because we want to, in this kind of situation, everybody needs to be very, very vigilant. We'll be looking at the policy side of this conversation as well. That's why Rotimi is here. We'll be speaking with the president, the chairman of NMA in Kano State. That's Dr. Sanusi Bala Mohammed, who he is joining us right away. So if you're not on Facebook and YouTube, you cannot see him, but not to worry, you can hear him.
And
But
why
if
aren't you on Facebook?
If you like to see him, if you like to see our guest, because we're the first that will be using this particular technology in this part of the world where you can actually see our guest on radio. Can you imagine
and we are
that?
proud of it.
Yeah, you can see
So-
our guest, and we in the studio as well. You can see us as well at the same time. So it's an amazing technology. So feel free, join the people online already right now, and drop your comments there. It's like you're watching a TV, and you can drop your comments just below in the comment section of our live stream on Facebook and YouTube.
Welcome to the show. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Some of you would have seen this message go around on WhatsApp. It's been shared widely from the NCDC. There was a statement sent on Saturday, 25th January, and I quote, as at the 24th of January 2020, 195 confirmed cases and 29 deaths have been reported in 11 states. Some of the states where the cases of Lassa fever has been reported in the latest outbreak, according to this report, include Ondo, Edo, Delta, Taraba, Plateau, Bauchi, and Kano. There are no confirmed cases in Lagos yet. Of the confirmed cases, 89% are from Ondo, Edo, and Ebonyi states. The increase in the number of cases at this time of the year is not unusual. This is coming from the NCDC due to ecological factors. And this is where we are premising our conversation this year. The increase in the number of cases is not unusual. That means we expect this to happen.
Right.
But a bit of good news in all of this, the NCDC says, I quote, a decline in the case of fatality rate of reported Lassa fever has been recorded. So there's a decline in the fatality rate from 23.4% in 2019 to 14.8% this year. It also says that there are now 5 laboratories in Nigeria with the capacity to diagnose Lassa fever.
It's sad, because let's also tell you that in 2019, 170 people were reported to have died from the virus in 2019. In 2018, WHO, which supports coordination for Nigeria's response to Lassa fever with national health actors, once reported that between 1 January and 25 March in 2018, the NCDC reported 394 laboratory confirmed cases. In 2018 epidemic, Nigeria is the largest on record with a number of confirmed cases in January and February alone, exceeding the total number of reported cases in the whole of 2017. So between January and February of 2018, the number of reported cases was too much. Was too much for the entire number of cases reported in 2017. But like we said earlier, it has dropped this year. but we don't know the number of people that we will lose yet for this year. But for last year, it was about 170 people. Currently now, it's about 29 or so.
Rotimi, I would like to start with you. Just before we came on air, we're talking about how long Lassa fever has been in Nigeria. And this report from the NCDC shows that we expect it to happen every year, yet we're never ready enough for it.
Yes, I mean, sadly, Lassa fever was first described in the 1950s in Nigeria, but it was identified properly as Lassa fever in 1969 when 3 missionary nurses died in Lassa. You know, Lassa, if you don't know, is somewhere in
It's
Nigeria.
a place.
It's a place. So it takes the name from the place. Now, there is something important we really need to understand. There is a serious level of policy insincerity going on in Nigeria.
Policy insincerity.
Yes, serious policy insincerity. And let me give an example aside from Lassa. So if there is a cholera outbreak in Nigeria, the health sector takes it on. But if you go to any developed country, if there is a cholera outbreak, while the health sector is responding, they will call the water people and say, excuse me, why is there an infection
in the
water system? What are you guys doing? You are trying to burden us. We ought to be dealing with cancer, hip replacement, and things like that, which, will happen.
Will actually need.
Yes, either because you actually can't prevent it.
Right.
Or it is difficult to prevent or come as a result of old age. What is this cholera thing? If there is a cholera outbreak in Nigeria, the health sector will not call out the water minister or commissioners or sector. They will pretend as if the cholera outbreak is a natural act of God.
Let's just deal with it.
Yes.
Let's mention the ministry we should be calling out right now.
So it's in this case, it's the Ministry of Agriculture. It's the Ministry of Agriculture.
How so?
Well, the main route through which Lassa fever is introduced into the chain is through rats playing with or having a party in food that is spread on the ground to dry. So it can be your gari, your cassava, your yam flour, whatever it is. That's the main route, especially in rural areas.
I wish you could go back to 2019 and cut some clips, because we've talked about this before.
We keep talking about it every year.
In fact, just to make the point, Wemimo, I responded to your tweet, promoting the program. So if you go to my Twitter handle at Rotimi Sankore, you will see the
thread.
The thread, and you will see the food spread on the floor with the rural farmers, spreading it. In case you haven't been to the village recently and you've forgotten how it is done. That is what happens.
Sometimes when you're even driving, you see it
on the roadside.
Right. Let's go to Kano.
Can I just emphasize that in developed countries or even in Nigeria, what they should be doing is that the Ministry of Agriculture should put out a campaign saying, if you do not have mechanical means of drying the food with electricity or otherwise, elevate it from the ground. Use bamboo, use whatever you have to do, elevate it from the ground.
So
and store the food in big plastic drums, not in these cotton sacks that the rats can. Look, once we do that, epidemiology 101, you identify the source of the epidemic.
Right.
You identify, isolate, and break the chain of transmission.
Indeed.
That's what they are doing in China now. With
massive sensitization to start, especially with the rural farmers.
Here, they are not isolating the source.
Right.
They are trying to break the chain.
We just wait for it to happen.
Yes, for it to happen every year.
Dr. Sanusi Bala Mohammed is joining us live from Kano. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
We'd like to know exactly how all this started in Kano, because from the report we got, it started from there. Can you take us back to how it all started?
Yeah, good morning. In Kano State, actually, it's not a kind of transmission that one will think as usual coming from the rats and so forth. We have a traveler, all these diseases, even the coronavirus in China is associated with travels and so forth. Someone traveled to visit someone in another state that happens to die from Lassa fever. And she came back to Kano and she was taken care of by her daughter. From there, she got the disease. She went to the hospital in Kano where she happened to be pregnant at the same time. She's having what is called antepartum hemorrhage and an attempt to save the baby. The doctors took her for a surgery, and that is where a number of them got infected. So if you take it from what we have is not that Lassa fever is based or there is a source or endemic in Kano. It's because of travel and interaction that it came into
Thank
Kano.
you for bringing
And that's
us back
what,
to
yes,
speed about how it started in Kano. There was a pregnant
Yes.
woman who was due for surgery,
yes.
and then doctors who were also working in that surgery got infected. That's a big question I've had, and I'm glad that you're here with us. And this is to say, as a medical practitioner, we're coming back to the source of Lassa fever. For this particular case, where it all started all over again this year, how come the doctors who performed the surgery got infected with Lassa fever? Does this show that there isn't enough protection? Doctors don't protect themselves, or medical workers don't protect themselves enough while interacting with patients?
Actually, for every surgery, any invasive procedure, one tries to abide by the best practice, the gloves and whatever you have. But at some point, especially when you are having an invasive procedure like such a surgery, and at a time this patient had to be resuscitated, what we call cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which is a kind of so much kind of intimate contact with the patient. Ideally, one is expected that by following the best practice that you are protected, but then along the way, still they are now like there happens to be infected. So this now brought a question that probably along the way, either the standard procedures were not adhered to because of the circumstances, or the standard procedure was adhered to, but still that means something is faulty somewhere. And for that purpose, there's going to be a kind of another form of sensitization and review of all the procedures that we follow.
Exactly what happened.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah, actually now what we are focused on together with the State Ministry of Health and Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital is to make sure that yes, with the success we have 1 week without much or more cases and success response that we have among those infected is to make sure that we have that sort of control. That is at the secondary and tertiary level. For primary level of control, that will be revisited
The
after
doctors and
all
medical
this.
workers
We're really sorry.
that died
We're
while
sorry
trying
about
to
that.
save a life. But again, Rotimi,
Really sad.
it's really sad.
Well,
It shows that there is a
There's-
lapse,
Yes,
a big lapse.
big lapse. So what he's describing now is the human-to-human transmission.
transmission.
Now, look, this is really
Transmission.
standard. It can be prevented. Anybody listening now, go to the website of the World Health Organization. Go to the disease list. Click on Lassa fever. You will see right at the bottom there is a paragraph that says health workers and exactly how they can deal with it. And it is very specific. about it. Don't forget, this thing has been around since the 1950s.
Yes.
Identified in Nigeria in 1969. So there is a process to prevent this. And let me just quote. It says, health workers may be infected by direct contact with blood, body fluids, urine, or stool of a patient with Lassa fever. When in close contact within 1 meter of patients, healthcare workers should wear face protection, a face shield, a medical mask, goggles, a clean, non-sterile long sleeve gown, gloves, and so on and so forth like that. If all these things are in place, the chances of infection is reduced to almost nil.
Let me go back to Dr. Sanusi. Rotimi has just highlighted what WHO has said. Now, do we have these protective gears since the 1950s, and we have this happen every year? So do doctors and medical workers have these gears, these protective gears at their disposal at our hospitals in Nigeria?
Yes, we do have them. But if you take it, there are some things like for the gloves, what we have is not an elbow gloves. And none of the facilities you can see in Nigeria that when you are going for surgery, you use elbow length gloves. It's something you wear up to the wrist, and it's the conventional gown, sterile gown that we wear, not disposable gown. And at the same time, goggles, yes, available, but not in all places. So as I said earlier, there may be lapse because it's an invasive procedure, and some of the kits that we have, as you all know, they are not of international standard. So they may be available sometimes, like I know for some time we have the disposable gowns and so forth, but over time they come out of stock. They couldn't be maintained. And these are the things that we are looking at critically to see where these things could be taken care of, and so that it will be what is required. Any case you are taking will be taken as a high-risk patient that can infect until proven otherwise. And by so, yes.
And while we have all agreed that this is a very, very, very dangerous virus and it can kill, you have mentioned that
it has no vaccine.
It has no vaccine.
It has no specific cure.
Yes, as a chairman of the NMA in Kano, what are you doing? What's your association doing for this Lassa fever that happens every year? Yet we don't have enough protective gears for those under your association.
Things we shouldn't be talking about.
Aren't you worried enough to have raised the dust about this?
Yeah. Actually, these were the things even before this. The issue most of the time is that even availability in Nigeria. You ask for something, you want to buy it, but the availability, especially these elbow length gloves and some of these disposable gowns, the next thing is that they are not available. But what we are saying is that it's sad to learn the hard way. But what had happened is
have we
something
learned really
so sad
every year?
to
Have we
everyone.
learned?
And I'm sure.
What have we learned?
Yeah, we have learned. You see, when you... Yeah, we have learned a lot of things, because now I don't need to be there as the chairman of NMA Kano to tell every member that everything should be on ground before you accept to go in for an invasive procedure. I don't need to be there. But before this, you talk, you make it, this is what is required. And if the management didn't provide, you still go ahead and take because of sympathy or other things. But for now, everybody have learned. I don't think I have to be there for everyone to abide by that.
What is the condition of other doctors that were exposed to the first patient?
No, we have only the people that have direct contact in the surgery. Not cleaner doesn't have direct contact to the patient. Those involve 3 doctors, which so sad we have lost 2, but we have a nurse, and a doctor, and these 2, they are doing well on treatment. 1 week on drugs, and they are responding very well. The other cleaners, all of them, including the linens and whatever was used, the beddings, they have on quarantine and they have been followed up. And no, we lost 2 doctors, and a doctor and the peri-op nurse are on admission and responding to treatment.
Health challenge in West Africa, endemic in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Nigeria. WHO has been working with the NCDC and other partners to control Lassa fever by deploying teams to hotspots to identify and treat patients, to strengthening, to prevent and control the spread at health facilities, and also engage with communities. We're taking your calls and your comments on Facebook. I see some people telling us local names. The rats are called. We'll come to that briefly. But Dr. Sanusi, before we go on our first break, I'd like you to highlight, I know we've talked about human-to-human transmission.
Right.
But let's talk about the very source. Where does Lassa fever come from? We've talked about transmission through food. But we know that rats are the primary, maybe other animals, carriers of Lassa fever. What kind of rats are these?
They are specific. There are specific species of rats. As we know, there are some rats that are big in size, the smaller ones, and so much. So this one that has mastomys, they call it lichtenensis, and it has a lot of like mammary glands going across. These are species of rats that I don't know if we have them in Kano, but I know it's available. They are there in some parts of Nigeria, especially northeast where Lassa fever was first diagnosed, and they are the the reservoirs that easily transmitted. They have the virus and they transmit it through human by contact with either their feces and other body secretions. Not only from kind of people drying some agricultural products, even in your house when you have such viruses, such rats, feeding from your plates and other things, they can still transmit it. But what we know is that the cases we have in Kano some years back and now, they all come following kind of human dynamism. That is movement from one place to the other. And just like the one we have this year. And then human to human transmission always is the major thing we have. And
we heard from a medical doctor as well that this can be contracted through sex. Is this true?
Through. Yes. In fact, it's also part of fleet. In fact, I don't know much about Lassa fever, but for Ebola, which is a similar sister to Lassa fever, and which can apply to this, is that after treatment, even for some times, the virus could still be in the semen, that is the sperm of that
It sounded funny during the chit-chat today. Someone said, Wemimo, don't worry, those rats, they're not Nigerian rats, they are imported.
Actually, they are Nigerian.
Of course, they
been
are
in Nigeria since the 1940s or 50s.
Someone else said that he saw rats.
They carry Nigerian passports for sure.
Because I was asking him that the borders are shut, so how did the rats get in? But they are Nigerians. If we can call them citizens. Someone else said he saw that rat had eaten a portion of his eba. He just caught the part away and continued. Very, very dangerous. So we're back after the break. I couldn't convince them in the morning. He said,
these are rats with the NIMC.
Dr. Mohammed, please stay on the line. Let's quickly go on a short break. We are back in a moment. When we return, we have phone lines buzzing already. Comments are dropping on our Facebook and Twitter pages as well. We'll take all your thoughts and we'll open up the phone line so you can interact with Dr. Mohammed and ask him any question that you've got. I am Sheriff Quadry.
I am Wemimo Adewuni. Join us again just in a moment.
More talk, news and sports after this.
from your number one talk news and sports station. This is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff.
I'm so tempted to say that we don't take this seriously enough and that lives don't matter to us in Nigeria because we can expect and predict Lassa fever.
So
and
predictable.
It happens every year.
Very predictable.
Yet we lose people every year to Lassa fever. We've talked about the human-to-human transmission of the disease, and the first case started in Kano State with a pregnant woman who the doctors were trying to save her. And unfortunately, some of those doctors trying to save her have lost their lives. The others and the medical worker are currently receiving treatment. And as Dr. Sanusi has told us, the chairman, NMA in Kano State, they are responding to treatment.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Sanusi Bala Mohammed, chairman, Nigeria Medical Association, NMA Kano State, is still with us on the line. Dr. Sanusi, thank you for staying with us.
Thank you.
Let's talk about symptoms. Dr. Sanusi, what are these symptoms that people should watch out for? And what can they do once these symptoms surface?
Okay, the major symptoms that herald is, apart from the usual malaise, weakness, and so forth, which are not specific at all, is the high-grade fever. Fever up to 38 degrees centigrade and above. And when such happens, these are the things that are being monitored even when someone is quarantined. The moment you pick that fever, you said, okay, this one, we have to screen for probable Lassa fever, as there are many other causes of fever in our environment. Yeah, then apart from that, then other things set on, and at the end stage, the major thing that others marks is bleeding. Bleeding from all orifices, eyes, the nose, the mouth, stool with blood or urine. Then finally, the final stage, which is multi-organ failure. One may have kidney failure, heart failure, may have convulsion if he bleed into the brain, and so many other things, and finally death.
Lassa fever. There are still some post-treatment say symptoms or health challenges that people have. Can you tell us what these things are?
Yeah, some of them are hearing loss. But one may not be hearing loss, there be some kind of delirium or confusion, and then, of course, psychological trauma that may set in after that. But then if you take all of them, there are things that goes down over time. They like
to the
not
phone lines
persist.
for now. Takes some of your comments also on Facebook. That's Nigeria Info 99.3, where we're live right now. Twitter also at Nigeria Info FM. If you'd like to join the conversation at this juncture, well, here are the numbers.
Call us on 01-277-0993, 01-277-1993, 01-277-2993, and 01-277-3993. This is Nigeria Info. We are listening.
This is Nigeria Info. We are listening. Wow.
That's right. Let's go to the phone lines a bit and take some thoughts. Hello, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Demi. I'm calling from the island.
Good to have you.
Yes. Okay, so there are a few challenges with Lassa fever. And like Chief Rotimi has really said, the best way is actually to prevent and to try and break the transmission. But in terms of health workers, the Kano situation was particularly unfortunate because Kano is not an area really known for Lassa fever. And surgical procedures, especially when we are bleeding, are particularly high risk. And even though Rotimi read from the WHO manual about using PPE, even with using those PPE for surgical operations, the risk is still particularly high.
True.
So it's quite unfortunate. If the doctors, unless they had known prior to surgery, it would have been difficult to really have protected themselves because of the amount of blood usually involved in such in such procedures.
But shouldn't the medical personnel be protected anyway, Lassa fever or not? I mean, if you're dealing with blood, there could be any kind of infection.
Okay, so it's difficult to perform surgical operations in the full PPE for Lassa fever.
Right.
So you wouldn't want to perform operations typically with those, because sometimes procedures can take a long period and the PPE can be quite uncomfortable. So to say that, and they're also quite expensive.
Right.
So to say that you're going to use those PPE for every single patient, it's something that is difficult and not very practicable.
Right. Thank you very much. I believe you're a medical worker, because that was a very apt and interesting point.
Joy Forever on Twitter says, any medical personnel that get infested is due to lack of observing safety procedure or lack of it. We need to do more. Fumigation, cleanliness, and hygiene are ways to prevent Lassa fever. Hello, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Wemimo, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, you are on to President and I'm calling from Coca.
Welcome to the show.
Rotimi, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, Rotimi is out now.
Okay. This shows you are listening to this a predictable disease that is not even an emergency one or a fight or one that occurred that take us by storm. So when you look at it and look at the preparedness of our government and the policies and the medical processor, we saw it to it that we are not even ready. So it's clear that we are living in danger. As we come prepared for a Lassa fever that has a name or has a occurrence.
Right.
So I think we are all just living in danger. Let us see that they will do something to serve it. Okay?
Thank you for calling. Jamil on Twitter says, good morning, gentlemen. Please, what about the stores here in town that we use to store in our local markets? Go there and see how they used to keep their stuff in open ground. I think we mentioned that earlier during the course of the program, that there needs to be a new approach, really, and someone needs to tell the traders or even the farmers on how to process food stuff. Shay says, why can't the medical associations take the blood samples of the infected patients out of the country for research for vaccines to cure this Lassa fever, since the sensitization measure is not strong enough? Well,
Dr. Sanusi, we do have laboratories now to test for Lassa fever in Nigeria. That's some improvement we've got over the years. But is there any research ongoing into vaccine for Lassa fever?
I'm not aware of any research for vaccine ongoing, but I know we have drug for treatment, which is ribavirin, and it's quite available in most of the states, both the injection and the tablets, and they have been put to use right here in Kano. Those infected, the two that were isolated, they were given the IV, that is the parenteral injection, whereas those that were thought to have close contact and at higher risk taken the tablets, and they are all responding to the drug.
Caught Lassa fever. So I'm wondering, so if we stop drinking Gary in its raw state and we take rice, someone just mentioned stores in markets where food is stored and we go there to buy it. So say I go buy rice, maybe the rat had peed into a portion of it, I didn't know. If I cook my food well enough, can I cook away the Lassa virus?
Yes, it has just like a fatty layer that dissolves with heat. So if you heat it very well, that is taken care of. But when you talk about Gary, unless if you are doing Eva, but if you are doing soaking Gary and so forth, those words is still there. If you cook
food well enough, you can get rid of the virus.
I want to know, Dr. Mohammed, really, with this Lassa fever, in 11 states right now, just a few number less than 30 have lost their lives. How would you describe the situation right now? Because the NCDC is calling it a national emergency. Are we at that level now?
Yes. Such cases, such diseases, Lassa, Ebola, coronavirus, when you have one case, then it becomes you must be a red alert. Because that one case does not mean one case. all the contacts, primary contact, secondary contact, you have to quarantine them and you have to follow up.
We should have red alert for both Lassa fever and coronavirus. Someone is saying on Facebook, coronavirus, not Lassa fever, should be on the front burner at this point in time. Well, both should be. Right. And we're talking coronavirus
both.
Tomorrow. Yeah, both. Rafael Adegoke on Facebook says a small rat that have protruding mouth is called what? Nkapi. Oh, Nkapi in Niger vernacular. Is that, what language is that? Says we are told small ones cause the Lassa fever, but do we also have the big ones that have protruding mouths? Do the big ones also cause Lassa fever? That's the question, Dr. Sanusi. Do big rats also cause? We have a lot of big rats in Lagos.
It's not the size that matter. It's not the size that matter. It's the species. It's the species. So this one that they call it has some specific, like a line, a kind of multiple mammary glands that is breast on a line on both sides going down. So it's a species, so to say, both sides.
Yeah, that's why.
That's why it's easier to say just control the rats.
Incubation period for Lassa fever, because people are wondering, does Lassa fever come with any specific time frame that once someone is exposed to it, then you should expect to start seeing symptoms?
It could be as short as 2 days and maximum 21 days.
Calls now 012770993 is for female callers and those in diaspora. 012771993, 2993 and 3993 for all other callers. You can join the show.
Right. Hello, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Yes,
good morning.
My name is Kende, KOA.
Welcome, Kende.
It's quite sad that Lassa fever is ravaging the land at this point, but I'm not hearing of any resignation from our so-called ministers, commissioners, and all. We should be hearing resignation. If this is the basic thing that we can predict to happen in a country, and we cannot prevent it, then what are they doing in their various positions? We should begin to look at cause and effect. If you cannot prevent such a thing, then you are not good enough to be there. That's the way I feel developed nations, people want to move forward, should be thinking.
Right.
You should put yourself on the line. If it happens, I am leaving. But then, hey, who cares about this in this country right now? During the elections, health policy wasn't really on the front burner. It was more or less security, corruption, and the like. We must begin to look at such things. Health. How do we want to keep our people safe?
Right.
It's sad that we do not value an average Nigerian life. I guess because we are too many, probably. But it's really, really sad. And I hope that Nigeria learns to value life.
Kende, thank you so much for talking to me. Dr. Sanusi, how can we prevent Lassa fever going forward?
Prevention is the key here. And major thing, either in the hospital, we have discussed earlier the way to go about it. And as it is now, most of the hospital are having non-contact thermometers, screening all patients that come in, so that if you have a temperature, fever, that the temperature is at the range, you'll be isolated, and then they will investigate further. And then also taking all the preventive measures, wearing gloves where necessary, and then PPEs in taking care of index cases. Those confirm. Then in home, at home, when it comes rodent control is key to that. You keep all the measures being used to that. And 2 is washing your hands. Most of the times, washing hands, as simple as it may be, with a kind of soap or water, it will take care of that. So, but if you suspect anyone having such symptoms or has traveled out, if you have not to be in the endemic area or is having high-grade fever, or after he was diagnosed, then all those things, contact with such patient should be avoided as much as possible. And if you have contact, make sure you wash your hand, you clothes, and
hands as often as possible. Don't eat the remnants the rats have eaten. We can't say this enough. Someone is laughing.
You're not
right
going to starve to death. You will not starve to death.
Please don't. Well, let's also mention, I like to call out names. Our current Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development is Sabo Nanunu. I always need to pause to call that name. And I've not heard anything from him. Like people have said, it needs to be multi-sectoral in our approach. Let's read some more comments before we get to the phones. Mr. Rotimi, those developed countries can hold water ministries responsible because the government actually provide water in the homes of citizens. But in Nigeria, 95% of our source for water by ourselves, wherever we can find, because government didn't give us. So who do we question? Kennedy Alex says, lots of virus is in Nigeria currently. Coronavirus is across the continent. We should fight as hard as we can to prevent them all. True that. Chinazo Remigos Nwigbo says, someone just sent this to me. I've seen this message also, people saying newspaper used for wrapping suya and akara. Some were kept in stores to hibernate. Newspapers are not washed. It cannot be washed. Dr. Sanusi, I've seen this message going around as broadcast saying when you buy suya, the newspaper used, or akara, even by the way,
right?
Some of those newspapers have been stored somewhere and they just pick them out and eat. Could you get the virus through the paper used in selling food by the road?
Sure. That could be. Getting from that if it's contaminated with the rat feces and so forth. It's good that now people are looking widely and are identifying our loopholes and where we have our unhygienic practice. And I think it's high time that all the roadside vendors should now imbibe the right hygiene habit.
Work properly. And this is by no means putting down Nigeria as a country that thinks don't work. But in some places where policy is key, policy is important, something that started back in the 1950s and up until 2020, we are still battling this same issue. What would you say to a deliberate policy that says we need to have vaccine for Lassa fever? Is that a way to go? Because we know that it's something that comes up every year. Because just mentioning prevention, all of those things, those things might not work. But if we have something that is built into the system that says go for this when you have a child, and this will prevent so diseases, is that a way to go, Dr. Sanusi?
Yes, vaccine could help in the control of Lassa fever. But don't forget that in other places, even now we are talking just about Lassa fever, but in other places where there are viral influenza, it keeps changing, mutating, and you have another strain that is resistant to the vaccine and will work here. So probably we are having even different strains of Lassa fever, we don't know. I don't know, probably if we have the vaccine, then we may be wiser and we may see all these changes. But then the vaccine will help.
Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tari. I'm calling from the election.
Your name is?
Tari.
Okay, Tari,
welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Listening to the doctor talking and Tari just mentioned that
1955.
30 years ago, we didn't have the vaccine. I think they changed to all the government that has been coming up to this government. It's a very big thing. It's like when people die, it seems like nothing. It's really very sad. It's very sad.
It is, Terry.
Someone called earlier and said, somebody should resign. Or come on and apologize. The Minister of Agriculture, I didn't say anything, said anything. Even if the president didn't say anything. They say it anyway.
It's almost as though it's not that important.
I feel sad myself. It's almost like these lives don't matter. Almost. Edgy on WhatsApp. WhatsApp number, by the way, is 08095975805. Says, morning Crossfire. Good morning. It's a shame that the health and security of the regular Nigerian has been thrown to the Philistines. Philistines. Why on earth will a medical doctor be made to work without the necessary safety gears? Somebody should be held for manslaughter for the avoidable death of these doctors. Thank you. Also, Emmanuel says, what's wrong with setting aside one Saturday for Operation Kill the Rat Around You by poisoning so as to eliminate them since they are life-threatening? I'll add to that, what's wrong with a community putting money together and doing mass fumigation? What's wrong with local governments taking this up and doing mass fumigation? Let's add to that. Another one here. Let me skip that one. You saw it earlier. Someone says, I bet you if Lassa fever were to be a cow-related disease, huge amounts would have been budgeted for prevention. Says because it's evident that cows are more valued in Nigeria than human lives. How?
That's not true, really.
How do you mean?
It's not true. Murtaza Miki Yusuf on Twitter says Lassa fever is a big threat to lives. Nigeria needs to build a reliable medical and human capacity to tackle the threats. Ever since the death of Dr. Stella Adadevo during the Ebola crisis, health workers in Nigeria are really endangered. Dr. Sanusi, and that's my next line of question this morning. You did mention that usually when you're going in for procedures such as, invasive procedure, you should have an elbow length kind of glove to wear, and currently you don't get to find all of those things. Would you say that medical practitioners in Nigeria are endangered species?
Yes, you can put it that way, but one thing that I think must be clear is that putting an elbow-length gloves is necessary in some procedures and in some is not. And because putting an elbow length will allow you, there will not be any gap in between from your fingers up to the elbow. So any procedure you do, yes, that place is well covered. But then there are procedures that your extent may not be above the fingers up to the wrist, and the conventional gloves may do as well. So in general, when you look at it, it's not only the right protective gadgets, but there are many factors. That's why I said this is something we are investigating to find what actually went wrong. One, it could be human factor. One may feel that you're doing well with the gloves to that level or so, and may breach the protocol. And the other thing is that there may be human errors. In wearing the kits, someone left a gap somewhere, especially when you are now faced with an unexpected emergencies. You are doing conventional surgery, the patient have heart arrest, you have to now change position, you have to provide some cardiac massage and so forth. Something may get wrong somewhere. So these are the things that you cannot say specifically what went wrong and expose these innocent health workers until you now look at what is there. Audit, what we call clinical audit, you look at all these things, check and so forth, and then you can come up and say this is actually the problem and we can go into it.
Around Nigeria every year, there was a LASSA, first international Lassa fever conference was held in January 2019, precisely 1 year ago. It was held in Abuja, and there was a gathering of scientists from more than 15 countries who came together to, I quote, increase the much-needed global health focus on Lassa fever in West Africa. Now, the conference was hosted by the NCDC, that's the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, and this conference is expected to be held every 2 years to further discuss progress towards stopping Lassa fever epidemic. And I'll be wondering if we're having conversations around vaccination, which we've mentioned, and how much more we can prevent this than having a conference every year, yet having the same fever
Dr.
every
Sanusi,
year.
Before we go, let me ask this question. The teaching hospitals across this country, I want to confirm, do we have funding for research at these teaching hospitals across the country?
You mean from government? There is none from government. The only research funds that come It comes from NGOs and foreign research, but not Nigeria.
Presenting any of these symptoms: malaise, fever, headache, sore throat, cough, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, chest pain, and so on and so on, please go to your doctor right away. Unfortunately, the first things we always check for in Nigeria is malaria.
Right.
Nigeria, we must go now. We have more conversations on health coming up tomorrow. Coronavirus. Yet we have a visa on arrival policy, and we're asking the questions: are we ready to, again, protect ourselves from coronavirus if it does knock on our doors? Can we be as lucky as we were with Ebola? Join us tomorrow for that.
They call it a novel virus, which means it's kind of new.
It's the first of its kind in a zone of its own.
Right.
And thank you very much, Dr. Sanusi Bala Muhammad, for joining us on the show this morning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Muhammad is the chairman of the Nigeria Medical Association in Kano State, and he joined us live from Kano. We're back tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Be sure to join us early on the show. The show starts at 6. Everyone is asking, Sheriff, whet our appetite. Sheriff, whet our appetite. More time, more time. I saw all the messages during the front pages also.
Right.
Don't worry. That's coming very soon.
Yeah, more time coming very soon. I will not try. I will not even dare to whet your appetite again.
Don't you dare. Because everyone is asking, but where is it? Where is the more time? That's happening very soon. Please do bear with us. We'll let you know, and that's very soon. I promise you very soon. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 6. Let's keep talking. I'm on social media at Wemimo Sports.
I'm there as well at Sheriff Quadry across all platforms.
See you tomorrow.